So friends, a Trump-appointed judge just ruled that Donald Trump may not unlawfully and unconstitutionally send troops in to Portland, Oregon. You know, friends, we are seeing in real time how the pen, the judicial pen, really is mightier than the sword. Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, here he goes again. Donald Trump tried to grab Oregon by the National Guard, tried to federalize Oregon State National Guard troops and send them into the streets of Portland, claiming that Portland is war-ravaged. That's a claim that was roundly rejected by a Trump-appointed Judge Karin Immergut, who, after a hearing on the matter, concluded that Donald Trump's factual assertions are untethered to the facts. And Judge Immergut issued an emergency temporary restraining order, a TRO, which is now in place for 14 days, prohibiting Donald Trump from federalizing the Oregon National Guard and sending them in to Portland. And within hours, what did Donald Trump and his flunkies do? They tried to violate Judge Immergut's order. How? They said, okay, we'll send California National Guard troops into Portland, or maybe we'll send Texas National Guard troops into Portland. And in the wee hours of Saturday night into Sunday morning, there was an emergency hearing held, and Judge Immergut basically said, no means no. You will not violate my order, and you will not pretend that my order didn't encompass all National Guard members and not just the Oregon National Guard, because in substance, my order said, your claims are untethered to the facts. There will be no activation or deployment of National Guard troops to Portland, Oregon. And she issued a second temporary restraining order, expanding it to all members of all National Guard components, regardless of what state they might come from. So let's start with the new reporting, and then we're going to turn to just a couple of choice passages from Judge Immergut's ruling. This from Politico. Headline, Judge blocks Trump's National Guard deployment in Portland for a second time. And that article begins, a federal judge has, for the second time in 2 days, blocked President Donald Trump from sending National Guard troops into Oregon, ruling that the administration appeared to defy her Saturday order that Trump lacked a legal basis for sending the military into Portland. U.S. District Judge Karin Immergut said Sunday that the administration's effort to circumvent her original order, in part by deploying Guard troops from California and Texas, was in direct contravention of her earlier decision, which prohibited Trump from federalizing 200 members of Oregon's National Guard. Though Trump had claimed the military was needed to combat daily violence against federal immigration officials, Judge Immergut, a Trump appointee, concluded that Trump's assessment was untethered to facts and failed to satisfy the legal basis to federalize the state's National Guard troops. Within hours of her ruling, however, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth ordered hundreds of members of California's National Guard to deploy to Portland and reached an agreement with Texas to send hundreds of that state's National Guard troops to Chicago, Portland, and other areas of the country. During an unusual Sunday night telephone hearing, Immergut said the Trump administration's maneuvers appeared to be a deliberate attempt to circumvent her initial decision. Quote from the judge, "I am certainly troubled by now hearing that both California and Texas National Guard are being sent into Oregon, which does appear to be in direct contravention of my order," Immergut said, describing the latest deployments as a violation of federal law and the 10th Amendment, which protects state sovereignty. Immergut agreed with attorneys for California and Oregon, who said the new deployments appeared to be intended to outrun the court. She repeatedly pressed Justice Department Attorney Eric Hamilton about whether he believed the administration had complied with her order, with the judge saying this, "You are missing the point," she scolded, as Hamilton noted the judge's Saturday order only applied to Oregon troops. In court filing Sunday, lawyers for Oregon, California, and Portland had urged Immergut to expand her order to cover California troops, but with word that Texas Guard personnel might also be on the way, the attorneys opposing the Trump administration's moves asked Immergut to broaden her order to ban deployment of Guard troops from any state or Washington, D.C. Quote, "It feels a little bit like we're playing a game of rhetorical whack-a-mole here," Oregon Senior Assistant Attorney General Scott Kennedy said. Okay, friends, now let's turn to just a few short passages from Trump-appointed Judge Karin Immergut's opinion. Here's how it starts. This case involves the intersection of three of the most fundamental principles in our constitutional democracy. The first concerns the relationship between the federal government and the states. The second concerns the relationship between the United States Armed Forces and domestic law enforcement. The third concerns the proper role of the judicial branch in ensuring that the executive branch complies with the laws and limitations imposed by the legislative branch. Whether we choose to follow what the Constitution mandates with respect to these three relationships goes to the heart of what it means to live under the rule of law in the United States. Then, the judge sets up the issue. On September 27, 2025, President Trump posted a message on his Truth Social account, stating that he was directing Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of War, to provide troops to protect war-ravaged Portland from Antifa and other domestic terrorists, and authorizing full force if necessary. And then, after dozens of pages meticulously going through the facts of what was really happening on the ground in Portland, Oregon, and analyzing the applicable law, here's what Judge Immergut says. In sum, the president is certainly entitled a great level of deference in his determination that he is unable with the regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. But a great level of deference is not equivalent to ignoring the facts on the ground. As the Ninth Circuit articulated, courts must review the president's determination to ensure that it reflects a colorable assessment of the facts and law within a range of honest judgment. Here, this court concludes that the president did not have a colorable basis to invoke the law that would allow him to federalize the National Guard because the situation on the ground belied an inability of federal law enforcement officers to execute federal law. The president's determination was simply untethered to the facts. And here comes Judge Immergut's exclamation point. Our historical tradition boils down to a simple proposition. This is a nation of constitutional law, not martial law. Defendants, meaning Trump and his DOJ lawyers, have made a range of arguments that, if accepted, risk blurring the line between civil and military federal power to the detriment of this nation. And so the judge goes on to rule. This court grants plaintiff's motion for temporary restraining order and temporarily enjoins, prohibits, defendants' September 28, 2025 memorandum ordering the federalization and deployment of Oregon National Guard service members to Portland. But then, because the Trump administration is defined by lawlessness, they basically said, okay, then we'll get National Guard troops from California or maybe from Texas. So in the middle of the night, we get a new temporary restraining order. Defendants, Trump and company, are temporarily enjoined from deploying federalized members of the National Guard, any National Guard, in Oregon. So friends, there's no two ways about it. The federal courts, the federal judges are standing up to the bully, to the tyrant, to the aspiring dictator. And that's not hard to do when you've got the facts on your side, you've got the law on your side, and you've got the Constitution on your side. Donald Trump may think that might makes right, but he is dead effing wrong about that. It's justice that matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe. Please stay tuned. And I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.